we have a big education role. And then, we got to simplify it. We can't just keep throwing speeds and feeds at people and expect them to make the leap to understanding what the value prop. We can't just keep throwing features and not talk about the benefits that they bring, right? Because people just get lost. There's a lot of jargon, and we love to use it, but when it comes to communicating to the public and getting the public trust, as well as I think is going to be important also in gaining customers and filling these data centers with customers. There's going to be another aspect to our communication plans, not just the power and the density and the cooling technologies and all that good stuff, but also the sustainability. Yeah, this is Emil Sayegh from Profit Growth Insights, and you are watching the Data Center Go-to-Market podcasts.
Good morning. For some of you, it's good afternoon. For some of you, it may even be good evening. I'm Joshua Feinberg, host of the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast, and I am absolutely thrilled to have a very special guest joining me today. I'm welcoming Emil Sayegh, who is the former CEO, president and board member of Entirety and Hostway, and now currently is the principal and CEO of Profit Growth Insights based in Austin. Emil, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Joshua. Honored to be here.
Honored to have you as well. I think what would be a super helpful place to start is as a 3-time CEO in this space with a very, very deep background in managed services and infrastructure. I'm curious how you ended up in this place in your journey. Was this something that you thought about as a teenager back at the time when everyone was mapping out their career goals, or did it just kind of happen by accident? What was the spark that set you on this path to end up in the fantastic place that you've ended up in your career?
Yeah, that's a great question, Joshua. So my career started as an engineer, right? I wanted to be an engineer. I'm a problem solver, and that's essentially how my career evolved. I kept solving problems, and then solving hard problems, and then people kind of brought me harder problems to solve, and then and it kind of evolved. And one of the problems that was happening in the early 2000s was this problem of power, and California was having brownouts, and it was the emergence of the internet and the emergence of data center space. So I joined a startup that specifically aimed to solve that problem with lower power chips and high density servers, and from there, essentially, I moved into services and figured out a world of services, and then joined Rackspace and helped launch the public cloud, and was instrumental in that, and then and continued my journey in the data center cloud space and managed services space, frankly.
It's really interesting because for people that have only been around the space for the last 5 or 10 years, it's easy to take for granted that SaaS and public cloud have always been this mature, well-established industry that's easy to navigate. But I'm back to a time in the early to mid 2000s where a lot of IT managers were really fearful of cloud. Some rightly so, some were trying to protect their job security, but there was this real battle of the wills and philosophies about client server versus trusting your data in the cloud and SaaS. And I imagine in the early days with this, it took a lot of time and energy to advance the value proposition and educate and build trust with different kinds of segments that needed to take this a lot more seriously to where we got to today.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the debate still rages on in some ways, public cloud versus private cloud. And I think people have resigned themselves that you need to use some kind of level of virtualization on your server so that you can maximize its use, versus a server that's just dedicated to a single application. I think virtualization has proven its mettle over the last 20 years. But certainly the debate rages on between public cloud and private cloud, although undoubtedly people are a lot more comfortable with public cloud. But I go back to go-to-market and messaging and focusing on the use case. This is where sometimes as marketers, we kind of gloss over it. we don't focus on the use case. We focus on the features. And whether it's public cloud or private cloud, to me, that's a feature. The real value is going to be what is the use case that is being used, and then that technology will find itself. I mean, we'll be able to figure out what technology we use, whether it's private cloud, public cloud. And it really depends on what your use case is and what you want out of your application.
Yeah, for sure. And there's this always the you don't know what you don't know, and figuring out the segmentation, figuring out the product market fit and the go-to-market fit. I've watched some really, really well-established companies in traditional software, and in SaaS, the 1.0 version, they were trying to sell to end users. The 2.0 version, channel partners were essential. They completely, so like you're always figuring this out. And like without it, you just flounder around. So there's this constant need for iterations and cycles. And a lot of what I end up talking with people about is that not only the historical patterns on what's worked for sales and marketing and customer success and account management and product and channel partnerships, but where it's headed next, and kind of looking into the crystal ball. But I think a great place to go next is you're at the stage in your career where I imagine you get approached by a lot of young people that are looking for advice, career advice on what they should do. And there's a really big debate that's going on, especially in the US right now, is rethinking higher education. So imagine from time to time that there's maybe it's nieces and nephews or cousins or teenage sons and daughters of neighbors or former coworkers that approach you looking for advice. They may not be technical. They may not be thinking that engineering or software development is for them, but it's hard to miss the massive amount of attention that generative AI and digital infrastructure has been getting over the last year or two. So they're curious about these careers and like client-facing roles. What would you tell to someone that's like late teens, early 20s that's trying to figure out if this is a place for them?
That's funny. I was at family weekend with two of my kids in college this past weekend, and I had a lot of these questions come up. So look, listen, there's certainly the threat of AI replacing certain jobs, certain functions. That's inevitable. I do think that AI will replace people that don't know how to use AI to their benefit, so they can add value on top of it. But look, this is topical. I would encourage a lot of people to get into something that's going to be indispensable on a go-forward basis when it comes to AI, which is data centers. That is the basic element by which AI functions and is able to deliver its value. Data centers is the foundation. So this is a market right now that is thirsty for talent. And in my humble opinion, it doesn't always require a degree to get into it. If being in engineering is not your calling, or being in development is not your calling, the trades offer a great way to make a very comfortable living, to get into that space. There's a need for electricians, for builders, for plumbers, so on and so forth, that would come in and help build these data centers. And there's an insatiable appetite right now for data center space in the world that is really fueled in part by this AI demand. Although AI demand is still a small part, but that's what's attracting a lot of attention, and it's forecasted to grow. As a matter of fact, a data center space is availability is an all-time low. And JLL just published a report a couple of weeks ago that is trending basically to zero availability. And then, so this is why we need more fresh talent to get into this business, everywhere from folks in the trades to people in engineering, to also people in go-to-market, right, that understand how to explain the value prop of data centers. Data centers aren't just these big boxy buildings that suck a lot of power. No, data centers is where medical imaging gets done. Data centers, we got to bring that value prop to the market so that we're not painted in the in the brush of these are the guys that are sucking all the energy and polluting and building these ugly buildings. On the contrary, if it wasn't for data centers, we wouldn't have navigation. We wouldn't have GPS navigation. We wouldn't have self-driving cars. We wouldn't have medical imaging. So on and so forth. So we got to bring the value prop of what data centers bring to society and the rapid advancements that data centers have brought to society.
Yeah, it's interesting. And even this conversation that we're having and YouTube and podcasting, like none of this would exist without having that kind of infrastructure to do this. It was a really novel concept 25 years ago when Mark Cuban made history for broadcasting a fashion show on the internet back at a time when people could barely figure out how to add a photo to a file attachment because there was no camera phones yet.
Exactly. Yep.
But yeah, it's wild. So when you look at this gap that needs to be filled with jobs and the talents that's retiring and who's going to take these jobs next, and out of a couple thousand higher education institutions throughout the US, there's maybe a handful that have some formal training specifically around data centers. When you think about the different parts, the operators, the technology, the facilities companies, construction, there's a lot of great opportunities in the construction space, but that's not necessarily what people normally think with construction. Their probably first inclination is the stuff that's really visible, working for a residential home builder or working for someone that's building retail. That's an interesting area too, is how much retail space is really being built and how much office space is being built. But for sure, industrial is a hot area, but it's not an area that gets a lot of attention.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Data centers, there was an article this morning, Wall Street Journal, that the data center designs are changing to go even more vertical, right? And then the design of the data centers is going to be, the future design of data centers is going to have more windows and so on and so forth to at least appear aesthetic versus, kind of like the boxy gray buildings that we're used to. So definitely, and this is, I would say, where architects come in. I gave a piece of advice to a friend of mine, a civil engineer, architect working for a construction company, to focus his career 10 years ago on data centers, and this person will never ever run out of work. In his lifetime, at least. So that was sound advice then. It's still sound advice now. This is data centers is what fuels, I would say, the future, the future technology in our society. That's the only way that we can take advantage of these technologies.
I see also too a lot of the big operators and developers having to invest a lot more resources in nurturing, I don't want to say gatekeepers, but they used to have to spend significant resources convincing planners to greenlight this thing. Now it's planners plus utility companies plus other regulators plus the general public that would vote on these referendums, because it's complex. It's not the traditional measures that a governor would be really excited about with job creation. It's different. The resources are different. Selling someone that there needs to be small modular nuclear reactors to power these data centers is for sure a different kind of conversation that needs to be had. So yeah, there's going to be a need for a different kind of education beyond just what we have now.
Exactly. And then this is kind of like where the role of the marketers comes in, and the whole go-to-market organizations. You got to also focus on community and building trust within the community, building those relationships within these communities. So it can't be all speeds and feeds. We got to talk about sustainability. We got to talk about how we are creating opportunities. Maybe, like we understand data center jobs don't create a lot of jobs on a permanent basis. They do create a lot of construction jobs, but on an ongoing basis, it's not it's not a factory. But we got to focus on the benefits and talk about what's important to that community where those data centers are being built. It's like, hey, look, we're going to have a medical imaging company here. We're going to have a autonomous car. If it's a rural community, potentially look, we're going to have the brains behind these self-driving combines that are, come in and, help you guys plow your fields, right? So that you can sit in your porch or your bedroom and then, watch the combine kind of doing the work for you when it's below freezing, right? So anyway, we got to be able to sell the value that data centers bring to that local community and to society in general, so that we can overcome some of these hurdles.
Yeah. Like from a technology standpoint, like we know that there's certain applications that for sure need edge, but a lot of people can't articulate why edge is a priority. And then you start talking through like, well, for EV infrastructure to scale, for smart cities to become a reality, for all of this stuff with LLMs and AI, for sure needs better latency. But like, yeah, these are all things that there's, and if I think about on a national level, every time Congress brings Alphabet, brings Facebook, whatever, to talk about these issues, you see such a glaring lack of understanding of social media technology that's been around 10 years. How do we even begin to advance this on a national level of getting people up to speed about the kind of infrastructure and even basic grid infrastructure investments that are necessary to do this? So yeah, there's a lot of need for education.
It's staggering. It's staggering that the politicians don't understand this better, right? But this is also a reflection of the population at large. So we have a big education role, and then we got to simplify it. We can't just keep throwing speeds and feeds at people and expect them to make the leap to understanding what the value prop. We can't just keep throwing features and not talk about the benefits that they bring, right? Because people just get lost. There's a lot of jargon, and we love to use it, but when it comes to communicating to the public and getting the public trust, as well as I think it's going to be important also in gaining customers and filling these data centers with customers. There's going to be another aspect to our communication plans, not just the power and the density and the cooling technologies and all that good stuff, but also the sustainability. Some of those elements that come with making sure that we are a good steward of the environment, right? That are going to be essential to a lot of companies, deciding to go in a certain data center.
I think the challenge with all of this too is a lot of companies are struggling on the go-to-market that got them there to where we are today versus what they need going forward. And I think there's so much saturation of messaging and so much competing for people's attention that the idea of a salesperson needing to show up as a true consultant and an expert and a thought leader and a trusted advisor is very real, but it's nearly impossible to do that across several verticals simultaneously. So this is another case where the small versus the mid-size versus the enterprise. At the enterprise level, they can afford to have a whole team of domain experts that immerses themselves in healthcare communities or financial services communities or manufacturing communities to really truly show up as a domain expert. For the smaller that has 10, 20 different kinds of businesses that they work with, I don't know. How do they avoid commoditization?
Yeah. Very true. Very true. Yeah.
That's the challenge with all of this.
Yep. The new world. Yep.
We talked about what advice resonates, what will potentially work well for someone in their late teens, early 20s that's trying to figure out what their first job could potentially look like in this space. What about someone that you may have worked with 10 years ago in the early days of hosting and managed services becoming more mature? You bump into them at a conference and you sense that they're a little bit burned out. They're thinking about their next opportunity. They want to do something related to digital infrastructure, and they're looking for some insight over lunch or a cup of coffee on how to get back on track. What would you advise someone in that situation?
Yeah, I mean, don't be afraid to go to an adjacent field, adjacent technology. There's a lot of advancements right now, and then I guess my first advice is to do away with can't do that or this can't be done. Just because maybe over the last 10 years, technology wasn't there to get something done. Technology is advancing very quickly. You got we just touched on nuclear. There's There's a resurgence in gas. Actually, gas is back, and we got to figure out how to locate data centers next to the natural gas sources. There is there's this whole world of AI. There's a world of liquid cooling that is coming on very strongly, right? I would say don't be afraid to go to one of those lateral areas, adjacent areas to where you've been playing. I know there's a lot of pressure, as an example, in the IT space. So there's been a bunch of layoffs and people reductions. I wouldn't be concerned if I was, one of those people to say, okay, well, I'm going to go and focus on the data center industry, not just data centers, but OEMs that supply the data center industry. There's so much advancement in technology that goes into data centers. It is as much as the advancement that you see in software, right? We saw all the rapid advancements in virtualization technology over the last decade. Now there's equivalent advancements in technology that's going inside of data centers. And then you can look at the revolution that the GPU chip from NVIDIA has created, right? There's a whole sector of industries and technologies that are around that are going to be needing to change and adapt to provide the amount of power, the amount of cooling that these GPUs require now and in the future, right?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of that firsthand over the last 10 years or so. I've seen a couple dozen people in sales and marketing roles that were working for data center operators that left and went to adjacent spaces. In a lot of cases, SaaS companies or managed services companies or something related to telecom. And I'm sure they're just finding better opportunity there. But you have to wonder at the end of the day, with the data center operators, the digital infrastructure companies that are constantly complaining about talent shortages and not able to fill these jobs, what they're thinking, letting talent go to adjacent industries. Are they really thinking this through? And is there a more creative approach to saying, okay, this person hit a wall in their particular job. What could 3 months make a huge difference in cross-training them into an area of higher growth? You wonder at some point if retention should be a bigger goal than it currently is, as opposed to just on the recruitment side.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean,
and lateral moves within companies.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just like customers. Yeah, of course. You gotta generate the leads. You gotta win them, and then you gotta retain them. That's the cycle. It's a 3-part cycle. Same thing with employees. And then the way that we retain employees is, if their job, let's say, is getting obsolete, you gotta cross train them. If they have a good attitude, man. Just train them. I always say whenever hiring new talent is, hire for attitude and then train for skills. Train for experience. And same thing with existing employees. They got to take the initiative as well. The employee has to go to their employer and say, "Here's what I'd like to do. Here's some of the training that the company may not offer, that I'd like support in, and then this is kind of where I see myself," right? So it's a two-part role here. The employer, the manager, needs to kind of keep an eye for that and challenge the employee, and say, well, here's some opportunities. They're going to require some training. We'll help support you. The employee also has to be willing and also take the initiative to come to their employer, to come to their manager and say, here's a set of things that I want to do. Which ones is the company interested in? I mean, again, for us to perform our best, I always say we have to perform in our magic zone. And the magic zone is basically a Venn diagram that is composed of 3 circles, right? The first one is you're doing something you love. You got to do something you love, right? But that's not enough, because you may love building sandcastles. The second question that you have to ask yourself is that you got to also be doing something that you're good at. So again, just doing something you love and something that you're good at may not be good enough to make a meaningful living. You may be good at building sandcastles and you may love building sandcastles, but people aren't willing to pay you more than $5 for building sandcastles. For them, that's not going to support your lifestyle unless you want to live as a bum on the beach, right? So so then the third one is the third part of the Venn diagram is that someone, a company, society is willing to pay you for enough to sustain your lifestyle. So it's the intersection of these three areas: something that you love to do, that you can get up in the morning, love to do. The second thing is something that you're really good at, and the third thing is something that society or someone is willing to pay you for enough to sustain the lifestyle that you choose for yourself. And then once we're in that magic zone, this is when we shine. This is when we do our best. This is when we feel appreciated because we're paid well. We're doing something we're passionate about and something that we're good at.
Yeah, because there's these well-trodden paths of, like, you see people being promoted from like SDRs into AEs. You see some people that are really good at retaining existing clients, but not so good at hunting for new. So they move into like account manager, customer success kind of roles. But like, yeah, just moving from go-to-market. Let's say somebody wants to move into more of an IT career. They want to move into operations or cybersecurity or something like that. Yeah, so it's a matter of figuring out. A lot of companies are pay referral bonuses for bringing in new. So there's a lot of experimenting that I think companies are going to be doing in the coming years to figure out all of the different angles on talent. I think most of the cycles are being spent right now on technology roles, because that seems to be the biggest shortage. But yeah, there's for sure some leaks in the bucket on the go-to-market side also.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.
Yeah, I mean, on the technology side, all the vendors are willing to, a lot of the vendors are willing to pay for the training as well. So we got to take it. I mean, we got to take advantage of that as employees, as employers as well. Tap into that. And I tell you, the hardest part at the many companies that I've been at, we would have budget for training, is spending that budget. It wasn't getting the budget for training, it's spending it. Getting people willing to take the training and advance their careers. It's kind of crazy. So I think it takes two to tango. And my advice is, don't get caught into this nonsensical loop. It's like, well, if I'm going to take training, is it on paid time or not? Man, do it on your own time. This is for your own benefit. I mean, this is stuff that's between, in your brain that you're going to keep forever, right? If that's a point of contention, then you're solving for the wrong problem. You're being too narrow-minded. Just go ahead, take advantage of it, and grow as a professional. So,
and even the on-demand training, I've been saying for years, like, anyone that spends time at the gym or goes out running or biking, I listened to 45 minutes of a LinkedIn Learning course while I was out walking this morning. Like, people that commute, people that travel a lot, there's so much downtime where you can squeeze this stuff in if you just have the willingness to do all of this. And I think that's part of the reason why AWS and the Google Career Certificates, all this stuff has been wildly popular and will continue to be increasingly popular, because it takes away a huge barrier and the cost and the time.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. This is kind of what I said, is if you hire for attitude, you train for skills, and part of the attitude is that curiosity, that desire to learn, that desire to advance, that ambition, right? I mean, you got to look for these things in people you hire. And then if you have those employees in your ranks, man, fuel that fire. Encourage them to learn more, encourage them to develop their skills. And one of the worst things that we can do as managers and CEOs and whatnot is not allow mobility within our companies as well. You touched on it a little bit, because what's the choice for somebody who's been in sales, let's say they have strong technical skills, they want to move into solution architecture, or they want to move into product management, right? And then we say, no, you're a good salesperson. You're the only one that can hit the quota here in this group at this level. You got to stay as a salesperson. This person is going to go somewhere else where they're gonna do something they love. Maybe they're good at selling, but they really love doing more technical stuff, right? And then somebody else is willing to pay them that, and then they're going to be in their magic zone. So let's create magic zones within our own companies, right? So that people can move laterally or be promoted into roles inside of the company, in other functions, and not trap people into one function just because they're good. They may not love what they're doing, right? They may be good at it but not love it. Let's put them in a role that they're good at, that they love to do, and then that they're going to get paid what they deserve, right?
Yeah, the AE to the product manager, the sales to the product manager is super interesting too, because they, as someone who's maybe marginally hitting quota or consistently a little bit over quota or something, they're having a 7-figure impact on the company. But in a product role, they could have an 8, maybe 9-figure impact on the company, because everything that they're doing now is not just what they're doing with their own prospects and their own book of business. They're creating leverage. And the unique insight of hanging around with the ideal prospects and clients for a couple of years gives them superpowers to understand, hey, everyone keeps asking for this. Why did we never build it?
Yeah. No, for sure. And then you see a salesperson that's very good technically. Maybe solution architecture, another path for them, right? You see a technical account manager that wants to move into the solution architecture side. That's another path as well. People that are heavily technical and focused on a single customer, and then you take that and you say, okay, well, I'm going to put you in solution architect where you can, my bottleneck all of a sudden is new leads, is new logos coming in that need to be architected properly. Just move them over there, and then maybe they, as a TAM, as a technical account manager, they kind of suffered from the monotony of just kind of dealing with 2 or 3 big customers. You go over there, you got that cycle. They got a new pep in their step. They get energized, with the activity and with the new customers and new logos that they're bringing in, and new use cases that they're having to look at and architect, right? So, yeah.
When you look at what's going on across all the different parts of the digital infrastructure, data center, critical facilities ecosystem, what do you think is the single biggest challenge, the single biggest problem that everyone is dealing with right now?
Look, certainly, I'm going to state the obvious: the scarcity of power, the scarcity of data center assets. This is something that is very top of mind. However, I want to talk about something a little bit more strategic, if you would allow me, is making sure that we don't chase the latest shiny object and go and overbuild. I want to remind everybody that we need to build data centers with purpose in mind, with the use cases in mind that we want to serve. I just point you back to the crypto euphoria from a few years ago, where we thought that crypto is going to go in every data center. But then what it turned out is that we need to build data centers specifically targeted for crypto in a certain area of the country, with certain power profile, and so on and so forth. So, a data center is not a data center, is not a data center. They need to be built with purpose. They need to be built with the end user in mind, with that use case in mind, so that, they don't get obsolete in 5 years and we keep chasing our tail and trying to retrofit data centers because we built them with the wrong power assumptions and whatnot. And then, and I'll just go back to a point we made earlier, is that we got to build things that last, that are friendly to the environment. Data centers have a 50-year life cycle. We got to build them so that we're not harming the environment. We got to build them in a sustainable way. We got to build them in a way that doesn't impact the community that they're in a negative way, right? Whether it's power or water consumption or pollution or whatnot. So I think these are the big challenges we're going to be facing. And these challenges are evolving quickly, because now we're running at the same pace as chip design. And as we know from Moore's law, chip design doesn't move in a linear fashion, but moves at an exponential rate of growth. And we got to adapt as a data center industry that is, somewhat, a little bit used to be a little bit more glacial in its space to something a lot more fast paced.
I think the purpose built is super interesting as well, because over the last couple of years, what's come into focus is the traditional repurposing doesn't work as well as it used to. For sure, the big hyperscalers, when they decommission a facility, there'll be an operator for the right price who wants to take that over. But the idea of some of these really older facilities being turned into office buildings for who? It was like the same way with the office buildings being turned into retail and what to do. Like there's so much that's being shaken up in commercial real estate now. And they've said for probably a good year or two that industrial is the healthiest part of that. Everyone else is kind of scrambling for what to do, as both traditional office space and retail has really been rethought with so many of the hybrid and remote and just different needs.
Spot on. Yep, exactly. Yep.
You don't really hear of decommissioning a shopping mall yet in our own geographic area. There's one that's being sunsetted in the next probably 6 to 12 months. And there's another one that's probably 5 years behind it also, that's run its full life cycle. And they'll be redeveloped in the area where we live in. There's a huge need for more housing. But yeah, there's definitely these shifts that are going on. The interesting one too is the Sears headquarters in Chicago years ago that you said, oh, wow, that's got amazing utility power. Great for redeveloping into data center campuses. But yeah, a lot of these second chances aren't quite the slam dunk that they were before, especially when utility power is the limiting constraint across the
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, maybe 10 years ago they had enough power, but now it's just not enough, right? So yeah. Mm-hmm.
When you think about what you do on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, Emil, how do you envision that either staying the same or changing when you think 2, 3, 4 years out? Do you envision a very different set of engagements or leadership in a technology company, or do you think it's going to be a somewhat of the same? What's going to change? What's going to stay the same?
Look, I think this whole debate of office versus in person, so on and so forth, is going to get settled. There's value in both. I think employees that, and especially younger generation employees, that came into the office during the COVID crisis or right around that, and were able to function at home, need to understand also that there is a lot of value for being in the office, for being seen, for collaborating with others, for water cooler talks, right? It doesn't mean that you have to be in the office 5 days a week, but both sides of the argument need to have some flexibility and some pragmatism into the situation, because I'm going to tell you this, that seeing somebody on Zoom or Teams or whatnot and talking to them in Slack is not the same thing as working with them face to face. You get completely different impressions when you're working with people face to face, good or bad. You get vibes. You see them how they operate. Plus, when you're working in the same office, you get to overhear what marketing is worrying about, what product is worrying about, what operations is worrying about, what the latest CSM is talking to their customer. So even as a salesperson, you can benefit instead of kind of like being siloed, sitting by yourself at home. So, excuse me. My advice is frankly for people to kind of get more flexible and figure out how to make hybrid work. I do believe that there's a need for people to be together. Is it 2 days, 3 days together a week? That's up to the company and to the group and the culture of the company. But there's a minimum of 2 or 3 days where people, in my humble opinion, need to be side by side working together if they're in the same location. Now, if your company has been built on a remote concept, then that's part of the culture of your company. and that would work if you're a development oriented company and whatnot. But I do think that companies that were traditional before COVID, and there's still this debate going on. I think both sides need to kind of compromise and then figure out something that works with an agreement that, hey, look, everybody's going to be in the office these 2 days, and then these other days are going to be optional or flexible or whatnot. So that would be my humble opinion of how things are going to evolve. That's not really potentially, hey, commercial real estate is coming back and everybody's coming back to the office, but it is kind of somewhere in between.
Yeah, agreed. It's so much of digital infrastructure is tied to real estate that it's hard to get away from the idea that the physical presence is. You look at one of the 5 biggest players in the world has realty in its name, and you go down to the next tier or two, dozens of companies with real estate or realty in this overall approach. So it does make sense that that's going to be super important. And even from someone that's in an AE role, how do you do tours if you're not physically there?
That's right. Exactly.
Client wants to come visit the facility. They're touring your data center and 3 or 4 others they've flown in for a day or two. And if you're not physically there to give them the tour, how does the deal progress?
That's right. And I'm going to tell you something. Also, for me, as CEO of multiple data center companies, there's an unfairness. There's a fairness issue or unfairness issue, whichever way you want to. But I have data center technicians that have to be there 24/7. They had to come in during the pandemic. They had to be there in person. Certainly they had to wear gloves and masks, but they had to be there physically. And for me, at this point, when there's no pandemic, to be able to say, well, there's haves and have-nots in my company where certain people can have to be there 24/7 at the facility, keeping the facility going, where some people can work from wherever they are if they're within driving range of my offices, right? I think there's a fairness issue as well, and as CEO, I have to make sure that the culture is uniform across my company. I can't have a culture for the marketing team and a culture for the sales team and a different culture for the development team and a different culture for the backbone of my company, which are my data center operators, which are, the guys that are racking and stacking the servers, the guys that are maintaining the generators and making sure that that all the electrical sophisticated electrical machinery is functioning, and so on and so forth, right? So I think there's a fairness issue, aside from, look, customer want to see it, want to feel it, want to witness it, right? And it is just awesome for you to be able to kind of walk a customer through a facility and then look at the expression in their faces when their jaws drop and see the amount of technology that is running in those data centers. Everything is high tech, from the generators to the controls to the cabling to the wiring. Everything is engineered with precision and sophistication. It's awe-inspiring, and then I think it's beneficial. So
yeah. Even pre-pandemic, there was this palpable of how do you avoid an us versus them with remote first? Because even leading into the pandemic, there was a lot of talent wars going on in the late 2010s. So yeah, these aren't new issues.
Yeah,
they just got buzzed.
I would say we just got to keep an open mind and be willing to compromise. It's not my way or the highway on both sides, and we got to come to a happy medium. And I think that's what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years, because everybody's seeing the benefits. So, I know Amazon just issued a mandate of 5 days a week. We'll see where that goes. That'll be a bellwether for the industry, but we'll see. But that's kind of like the way that I like to run things, is in a pragmatic way where we come to a happy medium, where the needs of the company are met, the culture stays intact, but also the needs of the employees are also met.
Zooming in a little more to your daily routine, I'm curious to get your thoughts on any favorite tools or apps or how AI has impacted your daily routine.
You know something? I love LinkedIn. You know, we were talking and you said it's the ever going, everlasting, kind of trade show. Um, to me, it is a low touch way for me to stay in touch with my tribe, my community, see what's going on. Sometimes I get ideas. I like the AI feature that is within LinkedIn where it kind of rewrites your post. I don't always take it. I always kind of like let it edit my post and then re-edit it because it doesn't always get it right. It'll get it right with time. It'll learn, but it's not there quite there yet. It also helped me, kind of like grammatically edit my posts, frankly, on LinkedIn. I like it a lot. So that would be my one of the ways that that AI has changed one of my favorite apps here.
Yeah, I see for sure too that there's like this period of my career pre-LinkedIn and post-LinkedIn, and the people that I work with and former clients from like 2010 on, it's really easy to stay in touch with them in low friction ways over time. And then the people that I work with in the 1990s and early 2000s, pre-LinkedIn, it's a lot more difficult.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's a lot more difficult, and yeah, I mean, I hardly spend. I mean, just in complete transparency, any time on Facebook or X or
Yeah.
any of these platforms. It's just I'll keep in touch with my friends and family on Facebook, but and X, I just don't know what to make of it yet. There's there's something to be done from a B2B on X. I just don't know what it is yet. It's just it's unfortunate, but it's a lot of political and yeah, it's a lot of political noise out there. And personally, my appeal to my LinkedIn tribe is please keep politics out of LinkedIn. I mean, that would be my plea. Keep your political beliefs on the side. Just don't bring them to LinkedIn because nobody ends up as good friends whenever you do that. And just keep them away. We have enough to talk about. And there's enough places to talk about politics other than LinkedIn. I mean, yeah, other than LinkedIn. Go talk about it anywhere else on Facebook and Twitter and all that good stuff. But just keep LinkedIn for the purpose that it was built, which is a place, for business people to talk to each other, connect, and yeah, that would be my play.
Yeah, I think for me, LinkedIn has become like the second CRM. I think for anyone in a go-to-market role, it's phenomenal what you can do with it, but you have to be willing to play the long game as well and use it in a way that educates and builds trust as opposed to just a way to think transaction of trying to push people into meetings. I think it's crazy that we're in the mid 2020s and you still have to remind people of that from time to time. But yeah, there's a lot of people that just think it's another version of Zoom info and they can just send out thousands of messages and people are going to magically want to book time with them on their calendar.
Yeah.
If
On
only.
Calendly, they send you the Calendly invite. That's my favorite. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. The world has changed. I would remember too with keeping the conversations professional on there. I remember going to a train the trainer workshop very early on in my career. I think it was for something PC troubleshooting. And the advice from the veteran instructor at the time is it will serve you well in your classes and your workshops, what you need to do to stay away from religion, sex, and politics, because one of those three.
And that's, by the way, that's good advice for LinkedIn users. That's very good advice because this is a professional environment and you don't know who you're going to offend and why, right? And you don't know an offhand comment can cost you a deal, can cost you a career opportunity. So anyway, yeah, agreed.
I think there's a lot of people too that are trying to build a personal, professional brand on LinkedIn. And I think in a lot of ways too, many enterprise employers are still figuring out the level of autonomy that they're comfortable with their employees actually having a strong. What I typically see by default in larger companies, especially in this space, is there's a ton of people that are taking the same video and the same post that's being slacked to all the employees and sharing the exact same content. It seems a lot more unusual in larger employees for people to be putting out unique text posts and unique videos and unique image content. Part of it is time, part of it's probably risk aversion and creating a culture where people can feel comfortable sharing their hot take on a session that they were at or a recent news announcement or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, not working for a company like in this sabbatical period that I'm in, kind of doing this consulting, and then just I feel like I have a lot more freedom, to kind of comment on things. But certainly, I mean, yes, you have to be beholden to the company that you're working at. But there's some degrees of freedom. Companies want you to be a thought leader, and you can be a thought leader within that margin. You certainly can't go and say, oh well, I'm so impressed by this competitor's product, and my product sucks, as an example. You can't say those things, but because you're still an employee of the company, represent the company. But there's a margin by which you can operate and show your thought leadership and present your personal brand. And I see a lot of people doing that successfully. But there's definitely some constraints, and you have to, if you're going to work for someone, if you're not going to be working for yourself, you got to live within those constraints. So, yeah.
This has all been terrific, Emil. I really appreciate you sharing so generously about your expertise and your thoughts on career development and your thoughts on teams working together and career progression and what this all means on a very practical level for data center development and utility grid constraints. It's fantastic. I know tons of people, both within the US and globally, are going to get an enormous amount of value from watching and listening to this interview. If someone wants to follow what you're working on or connect with you, is LinkedIn the best place to send someone? LinkedIn,
absolutely. Emil Sayegh, yep, on LinkedIn. Or you can shoot me an email for sure, emil.sayegh@gmail.com. I live in Austin, and happy to connect and help out in any way I can.
Cool. For Profit Growth Insights, where's the best place that you'd send someone to? The website or LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's profitgrowthinsights.com. And then there's a link for more information. And, Profit Growth Insights is really a consultancy where we help both operators, people that are CEOs like me, kind of essentially, solve some of the most critical problems, whether they're go-to-market problems or operational problems, or if they're looking at M&A, as well as help investors on the M&A front, essentially with diligence, ferreting out good companies, ferreting out integration, so on and so forth. So I've been blessed to be engaged with multiple parties on both sides of the equation, both on the operator side and on the investor side, and it's been an absolute joy to help people out. Yeah.
Well, that's terrific. I've been speaking with Emil Sayegh, who's a 3-time CEO, really best known for leading Entirety and Hostway, also now consulting through Profit Growth Insights. Emil is based out of Austin, Texas. And Emil, I really appreciate you joining me on the Data Center Go-to-Market podcast. It's been awesome.
Anytime. Thank you to you and to your listeners. And we will talk soon.
The Data Center Go-to-Market podcast is sponsored by DCSMI, elevating the role of sales, marketing, and go-to-market GTM professionals in the growth of the data center industry. To stay informed about upcoming episodes, make sure that you subscribe to the Data Center Sales and Marketing newsletter on the DCSMI website that can be found at www.dcsmi.com. Again, that URL is www.dcsmi.com.